Hello friends and foes of Middle-earth and welcome back. As you might know, I wasn't too impressed with Amazon's The Rings of Power, so instead I've decided to make my own series on the channel, though in a very different way than an actual series. The episodes will remind more of lore videos, but turned into a manuscript that could potentially have been adapted to a TV series. As you can imagine, it is challenging to find images and alike for such videos, so I've done my best to find artworks and screenshots to go along with the voiceover. This also means I've used a handful of images and artworks from the actual show. Please forgive me for that. In this first intro video, I'll first talk about my approach to this whole thing, and about what I've actually added, what I've changed, and what I've decided to include in this story. After that, I'll go into detail what these 5 seasons will be about, but I'll make sure to pause before we go into details, in case some of you don't want to hear spoilers already. So first off, many see the lore as something that restricts your imagination and the creative possibilities within the adaptation. And we have seen how Amazon totally deviates from Tolkien's actual work. That is not how I would approach it, nor do I think that's how anyone should approach any sort of adaptations. The more you deviate from the source material, the less it is an actual adaptation. Instead of seeing the lore as limiting, I see it as a framework. And within the lore, there's a lot of potential to pick and choose from. Some of these things can easily be woven together without contradicting Tolkien's lore. And that's also what I will try to demonstrate. Tolkien's books are great. I think almost all of us can agree on that. But books are one thing, and it's not always easily translated into a TV show. Sometimes one line in a book can cover a whole decade, or even more. I've been very aware of these time jumps, and I've done my best not to deviate from the order of events as Tolkien wrote it. So again, very different from what Amazon did, mixing things together, even if those events are thousands of years apart. I've made some changes when it comes to time jumps, and some in events, however. This have all been done in order to create a more coherent narrative and to optimize the storytelling. I've always done this with the utmost respect to the source material, and in ways that changes very little from the original lore. The essence is still very much the same. In fact, there are even certain elements within the lore that could justify these changes, but we will cover those in the lore breakdowns for each episode. As the lore is a big thing for me, I think it's only fair and reasonable to explain some of these changes, and why I specifically made them in some cases. However, I do not want to slow down the narrative within each episode, and that's why I'll only explain the lore in a separate video coming out after each episode. That means that after each episode, I will also upload a video afterwards, going into the lore behind each episode. Why I made some changes, how these changes can be justified, and how I think it makes for a better story in a TV series. I expect some of these videos to be longer than others, but I think it's certain each lore video will be longer than an actual episode. Like the real Amazon series, I've planned out 5 seasons, and each season will have around 10 episodes. This is unlike the show with only 8 episodes. Amazon's episodes are around 1 hour and 10 minutes long, whereas these are meant to be around 50 minutes to 1 hour. At the end of it all, it's roughly the same amount of screen time. I've made this change as I felt it would fit better with some of the many time jumps between episodes. But just to be clear, that does not mean that an actual episode will be 1 hour long. It's simply the estimated length of an episode based on the manuscript. So keep that in mind. As you can guess, that means there will be 100 videos about the Second Age, 50 episodes and a lore breakdown for each of those, plus this introduction. It's not something done within a month or even in a year, so we'll likely return to this series for quite some time on the channel. I don't want only to work on this, however, so after season 1 is over, I'll take a break from the series and work on some other videos, and then eventually I'll publish episodes for season 2. In the actual episodes, I've tried to jump from scene to scene and explain where we are and what would appear on screen. That also means it would look different than the actual artworks and images represented in the video. There are certain aspects I've decided not to give much thought, like casting, costumes, and music. I've done my best to write some good dialogue and compelling storytelling. I've added a good chunk of scenes myself, and I've used Tolkien as inspiration whenever I could. The rest I've simply written myself. I want to point out that I'm only one guy, not a whole team like there were for The Rings of Power. And at the same time, English is not even my native language, but I've done my best. And before we talk about what I got planned for each episode, I should clarify something. This series is not a guide to what Amazon should have done. I've already made a video about Amazon's lost potential, and how it would be impossible to make a faithful Second Age show without the proper rights. so feel free to watch that video as well. In short, you cannot make a proper Second Age show without the rights to the Silmarillion and the Unfinished Tales. Instead, this series should be considered differently. What a Second Age show should have been. And that brings us to the actual plans. If you want to be surprised as this series unfolds, you should stop watching now. Maybe check if episode 1 is already out. I don't want to spoil too much what happens in each season, so it will be very loosely explained here. And for the hardcore lore experts, you might have a better understanding of what might be in each season. So in season 1, we will follow the young Prince Eldarion from Númenor and how he travels to Grey Havens and befriends Círdan, Gil-galad and Elrond. Eldarion will travel to several places in Middle-earth, both with friends and an unexpected passenger. As the lore experts know, Eldarion went on several voyages to Middle-earth, and they are not described in much detail. I've done my best to detail these adventures, but I've also combined some of them, which I'll explain further in the lore breakdowns. There will be basically 3 storylines. One with Eldarion, one with the elves in Lindon, including well-known characters like Elrond, Gil-galad, Galadriel, Celeborn, Celebrimbor and Círdan. The last storyline will be on Númenor and include relatives of Eldarion. I will not say the specific year this season will cover, as that gives away too much, but season 2 will also feature Eldarion in the first half. Unlike the Rings of Power, I don't think it's a bad idea to kill off human characters. That may seem like we will lose our main protagonist, but I would say that the elves are probably the most important protagonists we will follow from season 1 to 5. Most important are Gil-galad, Elrond, Círdan, Galadriel and Celebrimbor. Other than that, there will be key characters from Númenor that will be a protagonist in each season, but we will get back to that. The reason I've picked these elves are rather simple. First of all, each of them are rather important. And secondly, each one of them have worn or wears one of the 3 elven rings, hence the name, the Rings of Power. There is one exception, of course, Celebrimbor, who created the 3 elven rings. As many of you know, he will eventually die and not be featured in the last 2 seasons. Lore-wise, Tolkien struggled with his story quite a lot, and seemed to mix a lot of different things together. So I've tried to include as much of it as possible, while also adding new stuff that of course fits other bits of lore. As you can imagine, the last season will feature the War of the Last Alliance. Gil-galad will die in the duel with Sauron, and that's where his storyline will end. Círdan may seem like an odd choice for a protagonist, but he will actually play a key role throughout the seasons. He was present when Isildur took the One Ring from Sauron, however, and along with Elrond, they tried to convince him to destroy the One Ring. Galadriel will of course also play an important role, but not to the degree she does in the Rings of Power. Instead of being an arrogant warrior princess, she will be a wise ruler, like Tolkien actually described her. Her role in the later seasons are still something I'm playing around with, as her actions in the late Second Age are not described in great detail. I've increased Elrond's role early on in the narrative, as I think he is a key character in Tolkien's works, and if you think about it, he's one of the only characters that both play an important role in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. For that reason, I also think he's a character that should play a very central role throughout the seasons. That doesn't mean he will steal all the screen time though. Now I've covered the main protagonists. So let's dive into Season 2. During Season 2, it becomes even more clear that Sauron has returned and is gathering his forces in Mordor in secret. As Anatar, he travels to Eregion and manipulates the elven smiths to create the Rings of Power. Eldarion also plays a minor role in the first half of this season, though I won't go into detail here. At the end of the season, Sauron creates the One Ring, and the last we see is Glorfindel and the Blue Wizards sailing towards Grey Havens. In Season 3, the War of Sauron and the Elves rages on in Eriador. This season is full of action, and we also get to know some of the later Númenorian rulers, like Tar Minastir and Queen Tar-Telperion. I've also decided to include the story with the Blue Wizards traveling east. It is something I had my doubts about including, but so many wanted to hear their story, and it gives us a chance to see the downfall of Camul and meet the 4 other houses of the dwarves. Season 3 ends with certain characters accepting rings by Sauron, and one of these will eventually become the Witch King. It's going to be interesting if you guys can guess which of the characters it will be. In Season 4, there's quite a time jump from Season 3. Season 3 indicates that the downfall of Númenor has begun, and now in Season 4, Tar Palantir rules as the last good ruler of Númenor. In this season we will see the rise of Ar-Pharazôn and how he takes control of Numenor and falls prey to Sauron's corruption. The season ends with the downfall of Numenor and Elendil and his sons sailing away from the island. It's going to be a very dark and tragic season, but there's hope even in the darkest hour. In Season 5, we're following Elendil and his sons Isildur and Anarion. We see the founding of Arnor and Gondor to some degree. They will falsely believe Sauron was defeated as the island sank, but then realize that he has returned to Mordor. This leads to the War of the Last Alliance, which many of you are familiar with. This will of course also include the epic duel between Sauron, Elendil and Gil-galad. The season ends with Isildur getting killed, the ring is lost, and the shards of Narsil are brought to Elrond in Rivendell. I could of course tell much more about each season, but I don't want to give too much away. I hope you guys are as excited as I am. This is going to be really great, and also something going on for quite some time. I will of course also make regular lore videos on the channel. I did want to publish episodes weekly, but that have been proven impossible for me to do. New episodes will be out on Thursdays though, so come back and check out the channel from time to time. And if you really want to know more about the lore, you should check out the lore breakdowns afterwards. Those will likely be published a day or two afterwards. It will also cover other things than lore, like other sources that inspired Tolkien and me. I can't wait to embark on this journey with you all. If you want to support me, feel free to become a member of the channel or use the super thanks function. Every penny is greatly appreciated and helps me out spending more time on YouTube. As always, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe. While we're waiting, maybe you want to watch one of these videos next. Farewell till next time.